Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the web marketing series. I'm your host Matt, and today's episode is recorded December 12th of 2015. In this episode, we're in this cool little middle ground. So the middle ground because the first 5 episodes in the series have been dealing with some of the history of who I am, kind of talking about the company, and then setting up AdWords and e-commerce conversion tracking. So technical stuff behind the scenes. The next step, the stuff in the future, is we need to start driving traffic to the website. So the middle ground then is making darn sure our ducks are in a row. And by that I mean making sure that if we're paying for traffic, if people are coming out to the website, that they're actually becoming users. So how do we actually do that? Well, the first thing I did earlier today was I wanted to get a handle on, well, how many potential users do I have right now, right? Because we're going to need some kind of delta here, like how many users did I have before I started doing advertising and before any changes I make versus how many after. And so to do that, it's actually really simple. Because I have one landing page for my store, in other words, I don't have multiple store pages, I just have like one landing page, I can basically go into Google Analytics and I can go into behavior, site content drill down, and then under my secondary dimension item right here, I can select default channel grouping. If you've never done these secondary dimensions before, this just simply says I want to show 2 different pieces of data on here. So in this case, I want to show the page where people went. That's the default for content drill down. But then I also want to show, well, how did they reach me? And so in this case, I care about organic search visits to the store page. And if we do that, if we actually look at organic search page visits to the store page, you can see here that I had 121 unique page views, which doesn't seem too bad because I actually relate, and I think it's pretty safe to do this, unique page views to unique visitors. So even if we give or take a little bit off of that, we can say, well, you know, I had between 100 and 140 potential customers on my store page, which sounds awesome until I do the math and I see that I only had 4 sales over this time period. That is November 11th to December 8th. So that's not good. So 4 sales over the course of a month is really, really bad. And so that's why I start to, well, let's just say doubt this number a little bit. And here's why. If I go into Google Webmaster Tools and I go into the search analytics box right here, it will show me roughly how many clicks I got from specific search terms. And this is really handy because this is basically just telling us, well, hey, you know, 121 unique page views from organic search, but it doesn't tell me what those search terms were. And that's really important because guess what? Not all search terms are built equally. So for example, if you searched for RackForms and you went to the store page, yes, it's possible that you went onto my site before and you said, man, that's some awesome software. I might buy that someday. And then 2 weeks later, you typed in RackForms because you somehow remembered that name and then you got there for Google search, blah, blah, blah. That's highly unlikely. Far more likely is that you did a search for web form builder software and you clicked on that link in Google search and you went to my site. That's far more likely. That's a targeted user right there. And so it turns out, even though this says 121 potential customers right here, you kind of interpret that way, I did a calculation by basically just counting relevant search terms from this column up, and I get this as a number. So 44. So 44 potential customers over the course of a month. Now here's the thing. I know there's a lot of fudge factor here, but what I can tell you is before I had my Google search penalty way back in 2011, and before I was ranked so low for most keywords, if I had around 100 visitors in a day, I would have about 4 sales and I'd have about 6 or 7 user inquiries, sometimes more. In other words, I'd have 6 or 7 people ask me a question about RackForms. As I just said, with 44 potential customers, so, about half of that, or I should say around the same amount of potential users, I got about 4 sales and I got about 6 or 7 questions. So the numbers match up very closely for what I used to rank very high versus when I rank very low right now, but we just consider that it's the same number of potential users. So I know it's kind of boring, but what does that mean? In my particular case then, I look at those numbers, 44 potential users over a month, and I start to think, well, what can I do to turn those 4 sales into 8 sales or 12 sales. That's got to be my focus, because again, there's no point in paying for traffic if I'm going to pay for 100 users, best case scenario paying $100 for them, and I'm only getting 4 users for that. Like, those numbers don't usually make sense, especially if they're buying a cloud hosting package. So, and by the way, I hesitate there because that's not realistic. Like right now, I'm bidding so low that I may have gotten 4 clicks from search, but that's over the course of 2 weeks. I can't afford to run a business if I'm only, getting, it just doesn't work. So 2 things I did today, and I would encourage you to do the same. Think about your website and how you can improve the process of delivering information to your customers so that they become users. Now, it's a little bit tricky for me, because when I had my first Google penalty, I went from $7,000 or $8,000 a month of revenue to $1,000, and then lower and lower and lower, and nothing changed about my website. So if you were looking from the outside and you didn't know about my Google search penalty, the first thing you'd say is, well, your website's terrible. It's hard to navigate. It doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, change your website. But I would say, well, no, the website hasn't changed. The visitors have. So basically, the one advantage I have in this area is that that's all I've done over the last 3 years is work on my website. Make it fast, make it incredibly useful, short, concise, etc. And again, I'd encourage you to check it out. Go to RackForms.com and just check it out yourself. It's a nice responsive site. It's easy to read, etc. So I've had a good head start in this department, but that doesn't mean that there's not more things that I can't do to be, let's just say, aggressive as I can to hopefully turn you into a user. Because I get so few visitors right now that I need to get almost 100% of people to visit my site to purchase, or I'm in big, big trouble. So 2 things I did. The first thing is, you may recall from earlier videos, I actually have separate landing pages for my AdWords campaign. And one of them, for one of my search terms, is this guy right here, so Web Form Builder. I've added this giant red button right here so that you can save 10%. Everybody loves a sale. I certainly do. We're going to try this out. We're going to see how it works. But this, when you click on an ad and you go to this page here, guess what? You can save 10% right off the bat. So I like that. We'll see how it works though. The second thing I did is, on my purchase page, I've added this video right here. So the one thing over the past couple of years that I've noticed is that a lot of users will have the same class of question, but worded slightly different. It's technical, it's more specific to my situation, but they do that because they're building something complex. And so even though I answer that type of question elsewhere on the site, maybe they see that answer and like, well, I don't know if that quite applies to me. So I've created a video, put it right on the store page. In other words, this store page where our users are going right here, you don't have to wonder if this is some fly-by-night operation. You could see our prices, you could see everything, and then you could see a video of me, the owner, talking to you about almost certainly your question that you have about it. That way you don't have to fire up an email or type stuff. It's really easy, it's quick, you can just see it right there. So those 2 things are just the start of what I wanted to do here over the next episode or so to make it so that this number versus the sales I get is much lower. Again, I don't necessarily believe this right here. I don't know where this number comes from. It's almost certainly not real users. That number is probably much lower. But you know what? It doesn't mean that I can't do everything I can to make my process of you being a visitor to you being a user as easy as possible. So we shall see what happens with that. We'll track views of this video. We'll see if anybody else likes it or not, etc. So that's what we've done. As always, hopefully this has helped. If nothing else, maybe giving you some ideas. Think about your site flow. How long does it take to go from the start to the finish? Does your site load fast? Do you have a way for the users to trust you and your product? And then also, what are your numbers? When people go to your store page, where have they come from? And then think about that in terms of the actual search terms that you use, because it wasn't until I did my search term investigation here that I started to see, oh yeah, I'm barely getting any actual organic traffic from what would be potential users. And so that helps you inform lots of different stuff. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll see you in the next episode.